is back into it in Chester. Here's Elsinger. Yes! Yes!
The center back, Jacob Glesnes, is going for it.
Oh my God! What a goal! And that will do it! One of the best comebacks in recent years. 3 unanswered by the Union. And they go into the Gold Cup break, winning it 3-2.
Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and yeah, like I told you guys, as soon as I came back from vacation, we're just going to do podcast after podcast. And yeah, I mean, I think this is my second one in 2 days. So yeah, I mean, I told you guys last episode, I told you guys on social media, if you guys want to come on the podcast, if you're a Philadelphia Union fan, you want to talk the Philadelphia Union, send me a message on social media and we'll get you on. And thank goodness the Philadelphia Union gave us some news to talk about today on Tuesday, January 18th. And joining me today to talk about how he became a fan, to talk about all that news and whatever else we can fit in here within an hour, he is Mr. Eric Frysinger. Eric, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Still getting adjusted to the cold. Came back from Florida and it was so much warmer down there. And yeah, always when you come back, I feel like from anywhere warm in the wintertime, it feels like it's 10 times colder when you go back into the cold. But, we're recording this podcast inside, so it's nice and warm inside. And yeah, that would suck terribly if I was outside recording this.
That's for sure.
But yeah, so anytime I have a brand new guest coming onto the podcast, I always like to start off figuring out, how they get into soccer. How did they become a fan of the Philadelphia Union? So Eric, how'd you get into the Union and soccer?
I started playing when I was young, like 7 or so. And then just kept playing all the way through college. And then as European soccer became more and more available in the U.S., started watching that. I became a Bayern fan actually back in like 2004 or so, because kind of randomly I started taking German in school and started watching and paying attention to the German national team. And like as a kid, like my favorite number was 13, and Michael Ballack was 13 for the national team, and he played for Bayern at the time. So I kind of became a fan of them. And then having that rooting interest, I guess, in a European team helped grow my interest in the game overall. And then before the Union even existed, I mean, as you know, obviously the Sons of Ben started well before. And I actually saw on Facebook, I discovered the Sons of Ben as a group. Again, before the Union had been announced, before any of that, I saw them and joined the Facebook group. So I wasn't like an official member or anything. But I saw it, I was like, yeah, bringing a team to Philly would be awesome. I support that. So I joined that Facebook group. And then it wasn't long after that, they announced the team. And I went to one of the opening things because I live outside the city. So I went into the city for one of the opening things. I don't even remember what exactly it was. But I remember they played like a hype video. They played some song by Muse, I think, and like some getting us hyped for the team. And then went to the first several home games. So like the first ever one, obviously against DC. And then the next couple after that, first one at now Subaru Park against Seattle. And been going to at least one game a season. I've never been a season ticket holder, but I've been going to at least a few games every season.
Yeah, that's all that matters, right? That you pay attention to the team, number one, and if you're able to get down to games during the season, you get down to a couple. And man, those German teams back in the early 2000s, I mean, you had Schweinsteiger in his prime, or not even in his prime yet. I mean, a young upcoming player, you had Philipp Lahm, like you said, Michael Ballack before he moved over to Chelsea. I mean, tough team. And yeah, I'm sure any listeners of the podcast that are a fan of the German national team, a lot of people are probably wishing that the Germany of today could replicate what the team did back in the day, or even 2014, beating Argentina in the World Cup. So, I mean, it's crazy to see Germany always produce all these top-class players, but then the last World Cup, I mean, it's like, what's going on there with them?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. And it's so unexpected too, because I mean they were doing pretty well, and even they'd had that one good Confederations Cup with their backups, kind of, and then after that, everything just kind of seemed like it went off the rails a little bit. But I was actually, speaking of Schweinsteiger, I was in the stadium in Munich for the preseason player introduction when they announced that they sold Schweinsteiger to Manchester United. And I don't think I've ever heard such loud booing and shock and horror.
No way.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, so that's cool that you bring up Schweinsteiger. So I'm a Manchester United fan, and yeah, it's terrible times, and definitely prefer the Philadelphia Union over Manchester United. But yeah, I was hyped when Schweinsteiger got announced at Manchester United, even though you could tell Schweinsteiger was coming to the end of his career and everything. But the first German in it, of course, it had to be Schweinsteiger, right? This guy has won everything at Bayern Munich. He's won everything with the German national team, and to be the first German to sign for Manchester United, I was like, I got to get this guy's jersey. And then he hardly plays for Manchester United because of injuries, and then Jose Mourinho doesn't want to play him, and then he comes over to America and plays for Chicago Fire. And I remember when the Chicago Fire, I think it was in 2019, I actually brought his jersey, his Manchester United one, and tried to get that signed. But as soon as the whistle blew, I think Chicago lost that game and just headed straight into the locker room. So I never got that signed. But I was like, you know what, I'm going to bring this with me just in case I can get this signed. But was never fortunate enough. But yeah, what a great player. And loved watching him play in MLS, even though the last year and a half for Chicago Fire, he was playing as a center back, and that was definitely not it was definitely not natural for him. But yeah, their Chicago Fire teams the last couple of seasons have been god awful, and
yeah, they've made some questionable decisions.
They have indeed. So that's awesome though to hear that you played soccer growing up and you played in college, and you stuck with it. So it is interesting getting fans on hearing, oh yeah, I just became a fan of the Philadelphia Union and was never a soccer fan, but yeah, I think MLS did it right. Like you said, the Sons of Ben were before the Philadelphia Union were a team, and that just shows, I mean, just soccer is so deep in the Philadelphia area, and thank goodness they were able to get a team here in the area. But let's go ahead and talk about last season before we talk about the latest news in MLS. Just what are your thoughts on the Philadelphia Union finishing second in the Eastern Conference? They reached the MLS Conference Final for the Eastern Conference. Obviously, they lost to New York City in that game, but they did win 2 playoff games, and never happened before, and nobody expected us to really go that far, and we did. And then they reached the semifinals against Club America in the CCL. So, what are your thoughts on the season?
Oh man, it was a fun season. It was a great season. It's just being able to watch the growth of the team over the past couple of seasons, really, because I think I saw that if you take the last 3 seasons, I think we have the best record in MLS. If you combine those. So just seeing that growth going from, because I mean, 2019 was a good year, all things considered. And then seeing that growth to the Supporters Shield last year, obviously, and then being able to take that next step and actually go somewhere in the playoffs was really fun to see. And it has me optimistic for the future, especially when you consider the player changes, with losing some young guys after winning the Supporters Shield, losing Ray Gaddis, and then being able to, even with those losses, build on the previous season and really come out firing in the playoffs was great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, our first season ever in CCL, and Kacper Przybylko wins the Golden Boot with 6 goals. I mean, I don't think anybody expected us to have anybody up for awards in that competition. To see Kacper lead all the players in CONCACAF with 6 goals, I mean, we'll talk about Kacper here in a little bit, but because of what he did in that competition, I know a lot of fans are like, oh, let's get rid of Kacper. He misses too many chances. And yeah, I'll definitely get your thoughts on that here in a little bit. But there's no doubt right now that Kacper's value is as high as it's ever been ever since he joined the Philadelphia Union, just because what he did in the CCL. He's proven the last 3 years that he can score in MLS. And we all know that's valuable. And then you look We were tied for second fewest goals conceded with Colorado with 35. I mean, this team's built on defense, right? It all starts with Andre Blake and then the two center backs, and then I always like to say El Brujo, because once Harris left in 2000 after the 2019 season, it's like, okay, we know Harris doesn't offer you anything defensively, but his passing ability, how can we replace that? And when we had El Brujo, I wasn't sure that he would have the passing ability, and then we saw in 2020. Yeah, this is a great signing by Ernst Tanner, and it seems like just Ernst Tanner is always hitting the ball out of the park with signing after signing. And, maybe there's a couple here and there that never really worked out, but more times than not, they've worked out. And you talked about losing Brendan Aronson, Mark McKenzie, and you bring in Daniel Gazdag, Leon Flock to kind of replace Brendan Aronson, and Stuart Finley you bring in to be a third backup center back. And, at times he looked really good, and I know there's all this speculation where, he could go back to Scotland because he should be playing. But when you have, in my opinion, two of the best center backs in MLS in front of you, it's kind of hard to break into that starting 11.
Yeah, not just two of the best, but two of the most durable too. They're being able to go through the whole season relatively injury-free was a real boost for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jacob Glesnes, I think, played every single game. Jack Elliott maybe missed one or two. I don't have the stats in front of me, but it sounds about right. But you did bring up a player there a little bit ago, Ray Gaddis. He signs for FC Cincinnati on a 2-year deal with an option for the 2024 season. So I talked about this last episode, and I remember just landing in Florida, like everybody's talking about Ray Gaddis, and I'm like, why are we talking about Ray Gaddis? Like, he's retired. Like, did I miss something? And everybody's saying he came out of retirement and signed for Cincinnati. I'm like, are you serious? Like, this makes no sense. This is a guy who said he's happy to retire a one-club player with the Philadelphia Union, and then a year after sitting out, he says, yeah, I'm going to go and follow Chris Albright and Pat Noonan to Cincinnati and help try to stabilize the defense. And from that standpoint, I do get it, because Cincinnati, ever since they've been in MLS, they concede a ton of goals. And what does Ray Gaddis do? He defends for his life. He can't offer you anything offensively, but a team that needs to stop conceding all these goals, yeah, Ray Gaddis can definitely help you out in that department. But the one thing that is a little bit confusing is, before Ray Gaddis, they signed Alvis Powell. And Alvis Powell, in my opinion, just like Ray Gaddis, maybe offers a little bit more going forward, but he's just as defensive as Ray Gaddis. Maybe not as good as a defender as Ray Gaddis, but I figured, okay, Alvis Powell's signing for Cincinnati, he's going to go start there. But now he's just signing a Ray Gaddis, and now I feel like, well, Ray Gaddis isn't going to come out of retirement unless he knows he's going to start. Now, I guess when we first signed Ray Gaddis out of West Virginia, we put him on the left side of the defense, and I guess Cincinnati could do that again. But I think Pat Noonan and Chris Albright saw, as soon as we signed Kai Wagner and put Ray Gaddis on the right side of the field, yeah, that worked out a lot better than playing Ray Gaddis on the left side of the field.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a good question, because in addition to the role on the field, off the field, they both fulfill kind of a similar role as well, being veteran leaders on the team. So it's definitely it's an odd move on their part, and just kind of makes you appreciate how well run the Union have been lately. Because even when teams try to imitate us to a certain extent, they don't always necessarily get it right. Because I feel like for us, at least, bringing in Alvis Powell was kind of almost like having him as a direct replacement for Ray Gaddis. Although as a backup rather than a starter, but in terms of the leadership and the veteran presence, I guess you could see them doing kind of a rotation of the two. They're both over 30, so they may not expect that either one of them to be able to play every game or every minute of every game, although Ray Gaddis has kind of proven that he's capable, but after a year off, it may take him a little bit of time to get back up to speed too. When I first saw that news, it definitely shook me a little bit. Having read a little bit of Ray Gaddis's reasoning behind it, it's a lot more understandable. It still kind of hurts though. Like, Gaddis, part of what made him special was that he spent his whole career with the Union, but that's part of what made him so beloved here. So seeing him go to another team you still feel that, even if you can understand his reasoning for it, like wanting to build up the Midwest and the area that he's from. I think we all like to think of our athletes as especially the longer term ones, as no matter where they're from originally, being from Philly, once they've been here long enough. So it can be a little hard to remember, like, yeah, he's from Indianapolis. And he wants to go back there and help build up that region, which makes sense to me, even if it still hurts a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And now, I'm glad you were talking about him wanting to build up the region and everything, because he was vocal in trying to help Chester and everything in his time here, did a lot in the community. And now I'm thinking back to this past season where we had alumni night, and I'm not sure if you were there or not, but like the main player that they made a big deal about was Ray Gaddis coming back. And now, I feel so stupid. Like, everybody was so happy and everything. Maybe Ray Gaddis didn't know at the time that he was going to sign for Cincinnati, but everybody's so happy that Ray Gaddis came back to the club. I feel like all's been forgiven that Ray Gaddis has never scored a goal for the club. We're just happy to see you back at the club, Ray Gaddis. Even though you announced unexpectedly that you were retiring, all's forgiven. You're back at the club. Everything's going well for the Union. But then you come out of retirement, and it's like, come on, Ray. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I totally get it. Just he has an opportunity to start, I feel like, and if not start, definitely rotate with Alvis Powell. And being close to home in Indianapolis is huge for him too, I'm sure. And on top of all that, just trying to build something in the area. And there's not many other players, in my opinion, that could help a whole team change the whole culture than Ray Gaddis. And they got themselves a good signing, and hopefully, if Ray Gaddis does score a goal, hopefully it's not against us. So Ray Gaddis can score.
His one and only goal is going to come against us. It's going to be the only one he ever scores.
It would hurt so bad. Like, everybody always says, if Ray scores, we riot. Like,
yeah, it'll be a different kind of riot.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. But let's go ahead and move on. So, point number 2, the Philadelphia Union, they have announced a brand new assistant manager to replace Pat Noonan, and he is former Philadelphia Union player Ryan Richter. He was selected in the 2011 MLS draft, 5th overall. He played for Toronto FC in MLS. He also had stints in the USL Pro and NASL. Most recently, Ryan served as the head coach of the Union's Academy U15s, who he brought to the first ever MLS Next Cup final this past season after making it through 4 single elimination playoff games. Ryan served as the director of the Philadelphia Union Junior Academy and as a coach with the Union Academy U12s and U17s. And look, I mean, Jim Curtin, Ernst Tanner, they said at the end of the season back in December that, a lot of people were hitting them up about potentially working with Jim Curtin, working for the Philadelphia Union, whether it be international, whether it be people in MLS, whether it be internally, whether it be people who have never worked in MLS as a whole. And ultimately, the Philadelphia Union go in-house. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because you look at Marlon LeBlanc, who used to coach at West Virginia, and then he was an academy coach, and then the Union promoted him to be U2's coach, and finally U2 are going to have a actual competition to play in this season, so it'll be interesting to see what Marlon LeBlanc does for U2. But we all look at Philadelphia Union as a team that likes to sign homegrowns, but it is nice to see a player that was drafted all the way back in 2011, which feels like forever ago, maybe not work out for the Philadelphia Union, but he went other places and had a pretty good career, and comes back to the Philadelphia Union. Ryan is from the Philadelphia area, so it makes sense that the Philadelphia Union gave him a job. But to see him help develop players, and that's what the Philadelphia Union are all about, is signing young players, whether it be Europeans, whether it be homegrowns, and developing those players so eventually they can get back to Europe or be sold to Europe. And look, U17s, U15s, these are going to be the next wave of homegrowns coming up the next couple of years here for the Philadelphia Union. And who better to call up to be an assistant manager that has been around these players every single day of the year than Ryan Richter. So I think this is a great signing for the Philadelphia Union. I haven't seen too much negative feedback on social media about this. I think it caught a lot of people off guard, but I have no complaints for this.
Yeah, I love it. The union talk a lot about the pathway to the pros in terms of the players, but that also exists for the coaching staff and behind the scenes. Um, you're giving these players who have the connection either to the area or to the team or both a chance to prove themselves in the academy. And as you just mentioned, he definitely proved himself in the academy, and now they're giving him a chance to prove himself at the next level. So it's a similar thing. And then that even extends as far as getting the chip with Pat Noonan going to Cincinnati. It extends to getting a chance to then, if they do well enough here as an assistant, they could go prove themselves as a head coach either elsewhere in MLS, USL, or in Europe even.
Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, and I was thinking about this before we even started recording, where, everybody talks about Jim Curtin's future. Jim Curtin's future was up in the air at the end of the season, where he was being linked to go to Cincinnati, and ultimately they took Pat Noonan, as we all know. But who's to say that Ryan doesn't keep progressing? He's only 32 years old. And obviously the Philadelphia Union, Ernst Tenner, think very highly of Ryan to say, hey, look, we know that you might not have the biggest resume, but he must have killed that interview process, because they were going internationally interviewing people who I've got to imagine have a lot bigger resumes than Ryan Richter, but it's a guy that knows how the Philadelphia Union want to play. He knows the philosophy. And to see the Philadelphia Union say, yeah, you're going to be the number 2 man, you're going to be Jim Curtin's right-hand man, I think that speaks highly of Ryan Richter. And for some of the reporters that were out at open practice today, the first day back for the Philadelphia Union, who was leading the practice? Ryan Richter. And so that tells you everything you need to know about that signing right there, is that the Philadelphia Union have 100% confidence in this guy. And I can't wait to see how the Philadelphia Union play under Jim Curtin and Ryan Richter and all the other assistant coaches, because we saw how the Philadelphia Union played under Pat Noonan. And like you said, it ultimately led to him getting a head coaching job. And the Philadelphia Union not only want to promote players, but they want to promote coaches. And look, Jim Curtin's coaching tree, if he can get another one and Ryan Richter promoted in a couple years, then that's just going to speak even highly of Jim Curtin's ability as a head coach, where teams are going to look, wow, Jim Curtin's helped develop 4, 5, 6, however many coaches into head coaching jobs or into bigger jobs. Let's give this guy a job and see what he can do at a bigger club. So I think this is a win-win all around. And speaking of win-wins, the Philadelphia Union have finally announced a new contract extension for Jack Elliott. Jack Elliott signs a 2-year contract extension with the Union with an option for the 2025 season. And yeah, it's about time. Jim and Ernst talked about, again, at the end of the season press conference, how they didn't shy away from it. They said they were working on a contract extension for Jack Elliott. We saw Jacob Glesnes get a contract extension a few weeks ago. Andre Blake got a contract extension during the season. Look, if you're a core player, you help contribute to the Philadelphia Union winning, they're going to take care of you. And we've seen that the last couple of years under Ernst Tenner. Kai Wagner got a contract extension. El Brujo got a contract extension. And not only are these players getting contract extensions, they're also getting a pay raise. It's saying, look, we value this much. And again, the next player we'll talk about maybe doesn't feel as valued at the Philadelphia Union. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But that's the one thing the Philadelphia Union don't shy away from is, look, if you help us be successful, we're going to reward you with a new contract and tell you that, look, we value you at this team, we value you at this club, and we believe that you're going to help us reach the goals that we want to win. And that's ultimately winning MLS Cup, ultimately getting back into Champions League and potentially winning that trophy. So, yeah, great to see Jack Elliott get rewarded with a new contract.
Absolutely. And especially anything that ties these guys down for some of their best years, because I think considering how good both Glesnes and Elliott have been, it's easy to forget how young they both are too. Potentially we could have them around for another 6-7 years and with them playing at a top level. So I think it's very good. It's very good to keep them tied to the team for a few years, and they'll continue to build chemistry. This was the first year they played regularly together. That's the other thing. As they continue to play together and form that center back partnership, they're just going to get better.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is too, right? Jack Elliott's a natural right-footed player, and he's playing as a left center back because Jacob Glesnes feels more comfortable on the right side as opposed to the left side. And to see Jack Elliott play as well as he did as a left center back, I mean, that just speaks about his professionalism and how good of an athlete Jack Elliott is. Look, we even see Jack Elliott play as a center defensive midfielder a couple of times too, and he scored a free kick this season. He took his penalty against Nashville. Maybe the best penalty. You can argue Jack McGlynn, but I did not expect Jack Elliott to hit a penalty that well. And this guy's always stepping up when we need him the most. And on top of that, too, I always try to tell people, look, because a player signs a contract extension doesn't mean they're going to be here for that whole contract. If anything, it just helps the union get even more if they decide, okay, we're going to sell Jack Elliott, we're going to sell Jacob Glesnes because they just signed a contract extension. Now we're going to make that team, whoever wants to buy them, pay even more money. You see it all the time in Europe. So, look, I hope Jack Elliott's here for as long as he wants to be here for. I want him to be here for another contract, but it does give the Philadelphia Union some flexibility if they do get offers in to sell Jack Elliott. They can say, hey, look, he just signed a new contract with us, and you're going to have to pay a little bit more money to try to pry him away from us. But I do want to play this clip from Jack Elliott's the press conference they had today about Jack Elliott talking about his new deal. But this isn't about his new deal. Jack Elliott was asked about,
it was
over the whole
tough,
COVID situation against New York City last season?
It's something that we can actually take into next season, having that for a lot of the players, having that taken away from us. It's going to be something that carries us forward next year and getting to that point again and being able to go about it in the way it should have been done the first time. And I think it's important to use it and use that as a tool to push forward and do things in the hard moments, because you never know when it could be taken away from you, and how quickly it can be.
That's exactly what we want to hear as Philadelphia Union fans, that every single player in that locker room is using that whole COVID situation as motivation to say, look, the league screwed us. They messed up. And Jack Elliott said basically that, but they're not going to dwell on that. They're not going to let that keep them down. They're just going to use that for extra motivation. It's like, okay, we probably should have played against New York City. And if we would have played against New York City, we probably would be in the MLS Cup final. And we all know that doesn't happen. I don't know about you, Eric, but I'm over the situation. I know some fans are like, yeah, they're still like, oh, what could have been, and that's sports, right? There's always that what could have been moment. But to see Jack Elliott say, yeah, him and the players are not thinking about what could have been, we're just going to use that for motivation because they know they're this close. And not that these players needed any more motivation, because I feel like since 2019, the Philadelphia Union have always been underdogs, because we've seen in years past where, okay, they've won a couple games, but then they go on this huge losing streak. And it's like, yeah, the Philadelphia Union aren't anybody to take serious. But since Ernst Tanner got here in 2019, it's like people know who the Philadelphia Union are. And I don't think this season they're going to be an underdog. And I think the last couple of seasons, they use the whole underdog mentality to their advantage. But they can't really say that this year because the league, players in the league know who the Philadelphia Union are. They know how they want to play. But you had the whole COVID situation against New York City last year. Man, this team can be scary good if they use that fire for every single game. I want to get your thoughts on Jack Elliott's comments there. Are you over the whole situation against New York City? Just let me know.
I wish I was more over it. I'm getting there. But I think the one positive to take away from that, I think, is basically lighting a fire, not just under the players, but the coaches, the fans. I think this season's going to be crazy because of this. I think everyone's going to be fired up, and I think we're going to keep that motivation going through the whole season. And I'm really excited to see where it goes. I think it's going to help lead to a really, really fun season all around.
Yeah, I hope so, right? I mean, it seems like, again, just talking about 2019, and I didn't really pay attention to the Philadelphia Union in the early years. I started paying attention to them a little bit in 2017, more in 2018, but all in 2019. And, I mean, I don't have to tell you, Eric, just dark years for the Philadelphia Union, but just ever since Ernst got here, it's been better, better, and better. And I know fans can argue, well, we actually won a trophy in 2020 and we didn't win a trophy in 2021. But to see us reach the semifinals for the first time ever in the CONCACAF Champions League, to win 2 playoff games, to fight so hard to get that second spot in the Eastern Conference, I do think the 2021 season was better than winning the Supporters' Shield. And maybe that's because the stadium was only at 25% capacity when we got to lift the trophy. And so I imagine that the atmosphere would have been a lot better. And maybe I would be saying, oh, yeah, nothing beats this atmosphere lifting a trophy compared to winning 2 playoff games if we would have had all 18,000 fans in the stadium in 2020. But, you can't live in the past. And the last thing I do want to bring up before we talk about some of the rumors, your thoughts, should the Philadelphia Union bring in some new players, is on Monday, January 17th, Adam Selinsky, he tweeted, Kacper Przybylko on a recent podcast said, I have a specific offer from the Chicago Fire. They are going to pay about $1 million for me, contract for 3 years. There's also interest from Europe. Today, Philadelphia will decide if it wants me to stay. And then somebody transcribed that whole podcast interview, and Kacper alluded a little bit more and said that he really only has an option. When he got here, he signed a 4-year contract with the Philadelphia Union, but every single year he has to fight for them to take advantage of this option. So I have an important contract for this season and would have an option for another year, but I will not hide. Chicago Fire reported the offer is on the table. The sports directors will talk to each other and we'll see what comes of it. I would like to accept this offer. I have a guaranteed long-term contract there. Kacper, a little bit more. He said that, yes, Chicago will have to pay a transfer fee for me. Like I said, $1 million, it's being reported. And $1 million in games, quite a lot of money. But I think me as a fan, I would much rather sell Kacper Przybylko to Europe for $3-4 million. Not saying that we would get that, but I think that's probably about what Kacper is valued at. Like I said, I mean, this is the highest value that Kacper has had since he's been here for the Philadelphia Union. But I get it from Kacper's sense. He wants a guaranteed contract, but I also get it from the Philadelphia Union sense, where the reason Kacper came to MLS and teams in Europe gave up on him is because he's had so many injury problems, and he almost retired in 2017, but somehow he found his way in Philadelphia. And 2019, 15 goals. In 2020, he caught COVID and I think had 10 goals. And then last season, he had 12 goals in MLS. So, I mean, he's proven, like I said earlier, that he can score in MLS. And for the most part, he has been healthy for the Philadelphia Union, minus getting COVID. And then the last game of the 2019 season, he did something to his ankle in warm-ups against New York City, so missed the playoffs. But I get it from the Philadelphia Union, because if Kacper gets hurt, that could be the end of his career. And why do you want to commit so much money to a player where he's had a long injury history? But at the same time, too, I see where Kacper is coming from, because he only has one career. And if a team's offering him a guaranteed contract where they say, look, if you get injured, we're still going to have faith. We're still going to have trust in you. That's why we're giving you this 3-year guaranteed contract, where the Philadelphia Union, yeah, they gave him a 4-year contract, but it's been an option year after year, year after year. And luckily for Kacper and the Philadelphia Union, they've picked up that option every single year, but Kacper just wants more stability. And I know some fans are like, oh, it's not the team that wants to sell Kacper, it's Kacper that wants to go. And some fans have been dogging on Kacper because, oh, Kacper's the one who says he wants to take the Chicago Fire's offer. And I feel like Kacper, is kind of putting the ball in the Philadelphia Union's court, saying, look, this is what I have on the table right now. If you want me to stay here, offer me the same thing that the Chicago Fire are offering me. You know what I've done. I think he even said that he's been the most effective striker since he's been here for the Philadelphia Union. And not only since he's been here, but he's been the most effective striker throughout his all Philadelphia Union history. 96 games, 40 goals, 16 assists. It's 0.41 goals per game, 0.58 goals and assists per game. Sebastian Latou's goals per game was 0.28. I mean, nobody comes close to Kacper. And yes, Kacper missed a lot of chances last season. And I'm a big supporter of Kacper, and I do like to stick up for Kacper, and I do say that the Philadelphia Union do need another striker, regardless or not if they sell Kacper Przybylko. The one player I would sell is Corey Burke, and then that means bringing in another striker. I can't see the Philadelphia Union having 5 strikers on the roster. They had 4 strikers on the roster last season, never even used Matthias Stavro only one time, and hopefully that doesn't happen with Julian Carranza, but it's tough. I'm not mad at Kacper for saying, look, I want to join a team that's offering me a guaranteed contract, and $1 million in GAM. We've seen what Ernst Tanner can do with money that he's given, and because the Philadelphia Union, we all know, don't spend a lot of money, but the money that he is given, he's hit on 98% of his transfers. So I'm not mad. I'm not angry. I want Kacper to stay, but if the Philadelphia Union don't feel confident giving him a guaranteed contract, then take the best offer on the table. What are your thoughts on that, Eric?
Yeah, there's a lot to go in that situation. I think often we tend to think of players as just the players and forget about the people side of things. So for any of us, job security is going to be important. And not only the job security, but the security of knowing you're going to be in this specific location, especially in an industry like any kind of sport, where there's a lot more uncertainty and a lot more potential to get moved around. Those kinds of things are going to be important to you. The other thing is that I haven't seen talked about as much. Everyone knows we're looking for a new striker. So there's a good chance if he stays, he may not be starting, at least not as often as he has been. So that's the other thing. Players want to play. So if he's going to get this guarantee if he feels wanted by Chicago and valued by them and like he's going to play, then it's natural for him to want to go there. And if we think we can bring in an adequate replacement, then it's natural for us to really consider that. We don't want an unhappy player. Part of what makes this team so good and so successful is the tight-knit nature of our locker room. Obviously, it's hard to tell completely from the outside as fans, but it certainly seems like these guys all really pull for each other and stick out for each other. So having someone in that locker room who's disgruntled and doesn't want to be there is detrimental. And that's true for any team, but especially with the situation we have here. I agree with you in terms of I'd rather see him go to Europe than play somewhere else in MLS and play against us. One thing I saw that statistic that you mentioned about him having the highest goals per game ratio of anyone in history, which speaks to him, but I think also speaks to the quality of the team and how much better the team has been lately. And I wonder how. Part of this is just I can't help but wonder how another striker, maybe more clinical striker, would have done with the same number. Maybe even someone like Letou. How many goals would he have scored playing in this team? So those numbers, I feel like those numbers are valuable. Could maybe be a little deceiving. So yeah, I'm torn between the curiosity of what we could have and the knowledge of he's been good. He's been a good solid striker who has dropped off at times, like in the playoffs. So what could we do with someone who is more consistent and has that consistency of scoring?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And not to mention, I mean, Julian Carranza, the Philadelphia Union have him on loan for one season. I know we had Matthias Stavro on loan for the second half of the season with an option to buy, and he never played. But, we're going into a full preseason with Julian Carranza where he's been in MLS, and I'll get your thoughts here in a little bit on the whole Julian Carranza signing. But Julian's going to expect to want to start, and we saw throughout the second half of the season, the Philadelphia Union went to a 4-3-2-1 formation with only one striker. And if you're going to do that, I mean, you can't put both Julian and Kacper in that lineup. I mean, I know Jim's talked about playing Kacper as a 10 in the past, but there's no way you're going to start Kacper over Jamiro Montero at the 10, who I don't think Jamiro is a 10, but I think this is the only way to keep Jamiro happy is he pictures himself as a 10. And yeah, I mean, you talked about it. If you have a player that's angry, not happy, get him out of the locker room. You don't want to disrupt that. And if that's the only way to keep Jamiro Montero happy by playing him as a 10, then maybe the Philadelphia Union should get rid of him. That's just me saying. I don't know if that's really how he feels or not, but I know he has said, yeah, he pictures himself as a 10. So I don't know if Jamiro's saying, okay, if you don't play me as a 10, I'm going to leave. I don't think it's like that. But yeah, I mean, the Philadelphia Union do have a lot of options what they can do. But the one thing is, if they do sell Kacper, they 100% need to bring in another striker because Julian Carranza, Sergio Santos, and Corey Burke, I feel like you're taking that striker group even down farther than what it was last year with Corey, Kacper, and Sergio Santos because Kacper had 12 goals last season. Julian had 1 goal, I believe, last season. Sergio had 6, can't stay healthy. Corey Burke had 4 goals. He's been so inconsistent, but that's been the story of the Philadelphia Union is all the strikers have been inconsistent. And it does make you wonder, okay, look, if we did have Sebastian Letou right now, if he was in his prime playing in this team right now, how many more goals would he have? Or not even Sebastian Letou, if we can get a more clinical striker in here who makes more of his goals than Kacper does, or more than Corey Burke or Sergio Santos, how much better could this team be if we just had a striker that could put chances away? I mean, it is interesting, and the value between Kacper and Sergio Santos or Corey Burke and Kacper Przybylko, Kacper has the highest value out of all of them. Yeah, I mean, you might be able to get something for Corey Burke, but one, he takes an international roster spot, and we know how valuable they are in MLS. 2, he's a lot more inconsistent than Kacper Przybylko is. So it's like, yeah, you might want to try to trade Corey Burke someplace within MLS, but if the offers aren't there, if you're not getting what you think you should get for him, then you're not going to just cut him. You're going to keep on to him. And if the Philadelphia Union get blown away by an offer for Kacper Przybylko, then they're going to think about it. Tom Bogert for MLSsoccer.com, he did say that as far as he understands, Philadelphia Union and Chicago Fire have held talks about Kacper, but nothing is as advanced as it seems with those tweets that I just read you guys. Tom assumes more talks are going to follow. I do want to note that Kacper was at training today with the team, as was Kai Wagner, who we'll get into that right here. The only players that weren't at training today were Jamiro Montero, Olivier, and Bizo because they're with their countries at African Cup of Nations, and then Corey Burke and Sergio Santos weren't at practice today. Not really sure what is up with that. The team never gave an update on that. They didn't have a press conference today. The only player they allowed to talk to the media was Jack Elliott. That is because of his new contract. But Jim Curtin is going to speak sometime this week to the media, so maybe we'll get an answer to why Sergio Santos and Corey Burke weren't at practice at the beginning of the week. Hopefully, they've returned by the time you guys are listening to this podcast, but we don't know until it happens. But speaking of Kai Wagner, like I said, he's been linked away with a move to Watford and Espanyol. And I talked about this a little bit on the podcast last episode, but I want to get your thoughts on just the rumors of Kai Wagner potentially leaving. We saw the rumors last year linking Kai Wagner to Fulham and West Ham. Obviously, nothing happened there. Kai stayed with the team. But now it's Watford and Espanyol. The same guy he reported West Ham and Fulham were interested last year, Christian Dyer. He's reporting, like I said, Watford and Espanyol. He said, hearing that Duke left back Kai Wagner is generating some good interest overseas from EPL, Bundesliga, and La Liga clubs. Watford and Espanyol among those showing the most interest, a couple Turkish teams as well. And so, I don't know. I looked at Espanyol's transfer, the highest transfer they paid so far this season, $2.4 million. I think Kai Wagner's market value is at least $5 million plus. I don't think the Philadelphia Union take anything less than that. Manuel Veth, who runs Transfer Market at the website, said in February he expects Kai Wagner's transfer value to be a lot higher than his 3.3 million value right now. So, yeah, I don't know about Espanyol paying $5+ million for Kai Wagner when they only paid $2.4 million for a striker, I believe it was this year. It's not a ton of money. And then Watford, they signed Hassan Kamara from Nice this window for $4.4 million. Other left backs on the roster include Adam Musina, who is away right now with Morocco at the African Cup of Nations. And then they have ex-Tottenham left back Danny Rose, who's only played 9 games so far this season. So, I mean, that makes a little bit of sense. If they do get rid of Danny Rose, Adam Musini is away at the African Cup of Nations, but they just paid $4.4 million for a left back. So I can't really see Watford offering money for Kai Wagner, or at least not $5 million. And I don't see how the Philadelphia Union take anything less than $5 million, like I said. And I know some fans are like, well, the Philadelphia Union are going to accept blah, 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 and then they're going to have a high sell-on clause because they did it for Mark McKenzie, they did it for Brendan Aronson, so they do it for Kai Wagner. Well, if a team's paying $5 million for Kai Wagner, they're not going to offer a 15-20% sell-on clause. I mean, $5 million to most teams in Europe is a lot of money. I mean, obviously to your top 6 clubs in the EPL, your top 3, your top 4 teams in the Bundesliga, La Liga, yeah, it's not a lot of money. But for most clubs in Europe, $5 million is a lot of money. So seeing how slow the market has been in Europe, I'm not really sure Kai Wagner gets sold this winter transfer window. Maybe in the summertime, or maybe Kai doesn't get sold at all. Just what are your thoughts on Kai Wagner's latest rumors linking him to clubs in Europe?
I could see it going either way, really. Like you said, the Union don't really have much incentive to sell. He's arguably the best left back in the league, and left backs are hard to find in general. Plus, it's a position where we don't really have much depth currently on the roster, so we'd have to replace him, which is much easier said than done. So there's no real reason for them to accept the lowball offer, other than his seemingly well-known, or at least well-rumored, desire to want to go back to play in Europe at some point soon. I think if he gets sold, it'll probably be this window rather than the summer. I have a hard time seeing the Union letting him go mid-season. That would be a pretty big blow. I could see them making a deal with him, saying, listen, you play one more season, and then we'll let you go next winter. We'll guarantee it. The other thing, I guess, to keep in mind is where he, and there's no way to really know this without asking him, but how much he weighs going to a team like Watford or Espanyol to be able to play in Europe against the chance to win a trophy here. Because no matter where you are, winning a trophy is the ultimate goal. And he's a lot more likely to win a trophy here than he is someplace like Watford, unless he's expecting to win the championship when they inevitably get relegated. So, yeah, it's really going to depend, I think, on where his values lie, his professional motivations, and also on what kind of offers teams are willing to make for him, because left backs are hard. They're one of the hardest positions to find and to fill, which both means that the Union are going to be more reluctant to sell, but also means other teams may be more willing to pay a lot of money to get him. So yeah, I've been keeping my eye on that one for a little while. I'm very curious to see where that goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a couple episodes ago, I talked about 3 players that I thought would be the most likely to leave this window: Jose Martinez, Jamiro Montero, and Kai Wagner. And Kai Wagner is the one out of those 3 that I would least like to lose, because, like you said, it's so hard to replace a left back. And I'll go back to the team you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, Bayern Munich. Once Philip Lahm retired, they struggled to find a left back, and then they finally found Alphonso Davies, and he's been, you can argue, the best left back in the whole world. And those guys do not grow on the tree as often as maybe some people like to think. I think it's the hardest position to play in soccer, and you don't see a lot of quality left backs in the world. I mean, you can think of Marcelo, you can think of Jordi Alba. Alphonso Davies and Andrew Robertson, people can name now, but I mean, can people name 10 really quality left backs? Probably not. If I ask somebody to say, oh, name me 10 good center backs. Oh, somebody can do that right away. But 10 good left backs? Yeah, I think a lot of fans are going to struggle with that. And yeah, I mean, if a team's desperate enough for a left back, then they'll come to the Philadelphia Union and say, look, I know Kai Wagner's played in the lower leagues in Europe, in Germany. He's played well in MLS. Let's go ahead and see what he can do. And I think one thing that maybe hurts the Philadelphia Union a little bit is Kai Wagner keeps going out there and saying, yeah, I want to go back to Europe. I want to go back to Europe. And so some teams know that, and they might try to lowball the Philadelphia Union. They might say, hey, look, you have a player that wants to come back here. Just, we're not going to offer you any more. We're not going to offer you any less. If we have to wait a year for Kai Wagner's contract to run out, then that's what we'll do. The Philadelphia Union do have a contract option for the 2023 season for Kai Wagner. Then after that season, then he's a free agent. So I don't know, maybe some teams are waiting for that contract to expire if Kai Wagner doesn't renew his contract, if he doesn't get sold. It would be hard, like you said, to see the Philadelphia Union sell Kai Wagner in the summer where, a couple more months and then it's MLS Cup playoffs again in November. So to see the Philadelphia Union try to sell then, yeah, that would be hard for me to swallow as a fan. So I think this is the best time for the Philadelphia Union to sell Kai Wagner. But look, the Philadelphia Union aren't going to sell just to sell. And, it's going to take a special offer for the Philadelphia Union to move Kai Wagner or just any player for that matter of fact. But the last thing I want to talk about is the Julian Carranza signing. It's the only signing so far. He had 3 goals and 38 appearances for Inter Miami. Last season, the Philadelphia Union scored 45 goals, and out of those 45 goals in the regular season, 22 of those came from strikers, 12 from Kacper, 6 from Sergio, 4 from Corey Burke. So my question to you, Eric, are you concerned the Philadelphia Union haven't signed anybody else so far this winter transfer window? Where you look, more and more teams in MLS are announcing players, and on top of that, they're announcing more DP players. Now, I know Jim Curtin was on Kevin Kincaid's podcast, It's Always Soccer in Philadelphia, last week, I believe it was, and he said, look, if we're going to make any deals, it's going to be near the end of January into February, and that is typically when the Philadelphia Union have been active, when they are active in the winter transfer market, but it is a little bit discouraging seeing no news for the Philadelphia Union. You see so many fans look at strikers and say, oh, the Philadelphia Union should target this guy. This is who the Philadelphia Union should sign. Yeah, I hope the Philadelphia Union announces signing soon. Striker, like I said earlier, and I'll keep saying, regardless or not, if we sell Kacper, I think we need another striker because I don't feel that confident with Julian Carranza, Sergio Santos, Corey Burke, and Kacper Przybylko. So if we can get a more prominent goal scorer, I'll feel a lot more confident. But any positions, are you concerned at all that the Union haven't signed anybody else, Eric?
I think I would be more concerned if it was a few years ago. I think they've, over the course of the past few years, they've kind of earned the right to do things how they want and ask us to trust them a little bit. That being said, it's definitely hard to resist worrying, not seeing all these signings, and especially given the clamor for getting a proven goal scorer to then go out and get a guy who is not a proven goal scorer yet. He definitely has potential. We'll see. He could light the league up. We don't know. But I think everyone was kind of in agreement that we should go out and get a proven goal scorer, and to not have that. And especially seeing Carranza get the number 9 too, it's like, there's a lot, and maybe that could just be us all putting too much stock in a number. I mean, it almost certainly is, but it's still, all those little things add up to it being understandable why some people might be a little worried. I think the other positions of need are really just depth. Especially along the back line, considering whether it's Stuart Finley leaves, stays, or goes. And then at the fullback positions, I think both fullback positions, at the very least, even if we keep Kai Wagner, I think we could use more depth back there. especially with Aldous Powell leaving. So that's losing some depth there. And there's all kinds of talk about whether or not we'll keep Matt Real. And a lot of times, even when he was coming off the bench, he wasn't playing at left back anyway. So, yeah, getting some depth back there, some quality depth. Although the other thing is, like last year, we could announce 4 new academy signings and who plug some of those depth holes and end up surprising us throughout the season. So it's really, that's the thing. And it's hard to tell with this team. Obviously, we can read about and even in some cases watch and get an idea of what players are coming up through the academy. But I don't think anyone expected most of the academy players that came up that we signed last season or last offseason to make as much of an impact as they did this season. And obviously you can't ask for that every year, but having that possibility gives you, I think, a lot more leeway in the transfer market, and which can then lead to not feeling the pressure of maybe overpaying for a player and being able to sit and wait on those quality deals and being able to find the right deals rather than jumping the gun and getting desperate to sign someone.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Jim Curtin and Ernst Henner did talk about that too. Neither one of them expected the 4 signings that they had of the homegrown players to contribute as much as they did last season. I mean, look, these guys had a shortened season in the USL. They weren't playing on the best USL team, but, you know, the quality was always there. And then as soon as they started getting their chance one by one, it's like, okay, like there is something about these players that we knew we had in Mark McKenzie and Brendan Aronson, but it's possible they might be better if they stay here a couple years than what Brendan Aronson and Mark McKenzie were for us when they were playing at the club. So, yeah, I think that is hard to, Antoine Sorensen's right now the backup left back to Kai Wagner, but it is hard to ask, if Kai Wagner gets hurt, if he gets sold, how much confidence do we have in Antoine Sorensen? And, yeah, Matt Real was at practice today with the Philadelphia Union, but he's not under contract with the club. Who knows what's going on with that situation? Again, maybe we'll hear something this week from Jim Curtin about why was Matt Real there, even though he's not with the team. It could just be, he hasn't got any offers yet, and we're giving him a place to train. And, we would like to have him back at the club, but if he doesn't want to sign the contract extension, then we can't force him to. He's a free agent. So I wouldn't mind having Matt Real back, especially if we sell Kai Wagner, because I'll go back to the game in 2020 against LAFC. I think Matt Real started that game at left back and not Kai Wagner, and Matt Real did a good job shutting down Carlos Vela in that game. And I know I'm asking fans to go back a ways back, even though it was only 2 years ago, but it seems like it was forever ago. So depth, I think, is the number one concern for me. Striker and then depth. I don't think there is any players on this roster where you can say, okay, we need to upgrade over Jamir Montero. We need to upgrade over Ali Bedoya. Striker, yes, we need to upgrade. But other than that, I mean, yeah, this team's good enough to go on a run again for MLS Cup. And if they can get the right deals in, then I'll be happy. But if Julian Carranza is the only deal, then we'll have to suck it up as long as we don't sell anybody. That's my biggest concern is if we wait too long and sell somebody, then we can't bring in a player. And it's like, okay, we screwed ourselves with selling this player, and now we don't have a backup in for this player. But I guess the good thing about that is in a couple more days, the European transfer window shuts. So I guess we don't really have to worry about Philadelphia Union players leaving to Europe after the window shuts at the end of January. So that is something I think Philadelphia Union fans should keep an eye on for Kai Wagner, for Kacper Przybylko potentially going to Europe, or maybe he stays in MLS where the transfer window shutting at the end of January doesn't matter. But just anything else, Eric, that you want to add to the podcast? Or I know we talked about a lot.
Well, I was just kind of a random thought, actually. I was just noticing this today. We came 9 minutes away from having 2 Union players play against each other in an international tournament. With Montero getting subbed off, I think it was like the 87th minute, and Baizo coming on in the like right towards the end. It was, oh man, that would have been fun. It would have been fun to see the two of them play against each other.
Yeah, it would have been
in the
awesome.
game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't even think that's ever happened before where in a meaningful game, two Philadelphia Union players have played against each other. That would have been cool to see. And especially with how close those two guys are, you know that they're super competitive, and to see them share a moment together playing against each other for their countries, I think that would have been special for them. But the wait continues for Philadelphia Union fans to wait to see two of their players play against each other at an international tournament. But Eric, it's been a blast having you on the podcast. And for people that aren't following you on social media, where can people follow you?
Pretty much anywhere. Twitter, Instagram, and I wish I had my handles memorized, but I'm on there. You can search my name. They'll come up there under my actual name, so you'll see me there.
Exactly. And like I always do, at the end of every episode, I leave where you can find each guest, the podcast information in the show notes. So I'll be sure to put Eric's information in there. And if you guys, for whatever reason, aren't following the podcast still on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcasts, The Free Kick. And you guys know it by now. Look, this is 2 guests in 3-4 days, and they're just going to keep rolling in. So I always have a blast talking to Philadelphia Union fans, whether I said it before, whether they've been on the podcast before, but just meeting new fans that I've never talked to before, hearing their stories, how they got into soccer, how they got into the Philadelphia Union. And Eric, you've been a blast, like I said, being on the podcast.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you guys got to tune in next episode to find out. I think we have 2 guests in one episode. So that should be a good time, and I'm not going to spoil it. If you guys follow on social media, I think you guys could probably put 2 and 2 together who I'm talking about, but you guys got to wait till the next episode. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.